Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then we consider what you know of the news of the day. Today on the show, we have the MP for Seremban, YB Anthony Loke. He's also the former Minister of Transport and currently the National Organising Secretary of DAP. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today, YB. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
So, March 18th marks the 55th anniversary of DAP as a political party, quite a significant milestone for DAP. And I wanted to ask you to begin this conversation by asking if this is a time for the party, for some self-reflection for those within the party, and what would that self-reflection entail? What are you thinking about as the party turns 55?
Well, I think, of course, we have come to a matured age as a party. We have come a long way since the inception of the party, and most of the founding members actually are no longer with us, except for a few, such as Lim Kee Siang. But of course, right now, the challenge for the party moving forward is that we have to bring the party to another level. And I think, of course, right now, Malaysian politics is in a very interesting juncture. And we are in a crossroad of how to shape our politics in the next 20 to 30 years. And I think DAP has a very big role to play, having won a big mandate from the people in the last general election and having a big representation in parliament. I think that is a big responsibility for us to shape the countries moving forward. I'm sure everybody knows and the challenges that we are facing today and the political problems that we are in right now. And a lot of people are very upset about the current situation. So I think it's very important upon the leadership of the DAP to chart a new direction, not just for the party, but for the country as well.
Anthony, I'm really happy to note that the party and I are about the same age. I just turned 35 myself. And maturity is something that is not a foregone conclusion when you grow older. Yeah. But having said that, I wonder if you could help us understand the difference between the internal conversations that the party is having with its membership, with its leadership, as opposed to its base, because it's not always clear that political parties and their base run in tandem, or that the base is even interested in the internal workings of the political party that it supports. Can you explain to us the relationship that the DAP has with its base?
Well, of course, our base expects us to deliver our promises and what we have stood for all this while. But of course, once you're in government, especially during our 22 months in government, there are certain realities that we face and certain hurdles that we face within the government that do not allow us to implement certain issues or certain policies that we have fought for many years. But of course, I think it is important for us to explain to our ground and to our base that moving forward, what is the reality that we have to face, and how do we overcome all these challenges and hurdles as a party. And in Malaysian politics, of course, the demographic is keep on changing. And of course, with the new set of voters coming in, especially with the young voters, how do we engage and how do we project ourselves? I think these are the challenges that we have to impress upon our own ground and our own base of how to move forward. And that will be a huge challenge for us.
Anthony, if I understand correctly, you've been involved with DAP since the early 2000s. Is the party you joined the same party it is today?
Well, it depends on how you define. I mean, a lot of people are afraid that we are a change party. If you say that we are no longer the DAP that we know, of course, to certain people, that is a very negative connotation. But of course, compared to the early 2000s and now, of course, we are a very much different party. In the early 2000s, we are a very minor party in terms of representation in parliament or in the state assemblies. Our membership are very small, and our presence are only mostly in the non-Malay majority areas or in urban areas. But now, we are a big party in terms of representation in parliament, In fact, we are the single largest party in parliament currently.
But what about the core values of the party? What
In
about
terms of
what the ethos of the party? Is it still the same things that are driving the people who join DAP today?
Of course, I think in terms of core values, they are more or less still intact. People want social justice. People want a fair government. People want us to fight corruption, and people want us to provide good governance to the people. I think these are the core values of what drive people to join the DAP and to support the DAP. I think these are the values that we have to maintain, and we have to remember that the reason why we joined the party in the first place. So that is, I think, very important for us in terms of imposing or impressing our own membership moving forward.
Anthony, we could perhaps, break some of these issues down in terms of, say, ideology, the ideology of the party. I think it was formerly Democratic Socialist. It's very unclear today where the party stands on some of these issues, because if you look at some of the MPs in the debates about globalization and so on, so you have MPs from DAP on both sides of the debate and so on and so forth. Is ideology, in fact, important to your base? Is it something that is just internal, or is it about, does it really form the basis of your policy horizons?
Well, of course, I think our ideology is very clear. Our basic ideology is social democracy, and that is a guiding principle for us to form our policies and form our positions on various issues. But of course, in the context of Malaysian politics, sometimes ideological debate is not very clear. In the both sides of the divide, we have been overwhelmed by issues of race and religion and how do we define ourselves. So I think in terms of ideological debate, it's not very clear in the national context. But as far as DAP is concerned, I think that is our basic guiding principle in terms of how do we position ourselves. Of course, I think in this respect, of course, there are a lot of work to do for us. There are a long way to go to educate our members in terms of our ideological foundation and our framework. But in terms of leadership, I think more or less, we are still very much intact in terms of that guiding principle. Right. But of course, in any parties, you will have MPs or elected representatives sometimes who will be taking a more populist position in shaping our debate and shaping our policies.
As your role, in your role as party whip, is that a challenge for you to keep MPs, DAP MPs in line?
Well, I think as far as DAP MPs are concerned, we are very, very united. Of course, when we have differences in terms of opinions, we will come together, we will discuss it, we will debate it internally within our own MPs forum. And we let MPs to air their views openly, and we have very regular MPs meeting when Parliament are in session. And in fact, before we make any big decision in terms of voting, in terms of how do we position ourselves in certain issues or in certain legislation, the discussion are always in place. And we have always consult MPs among our MPs before we come to a final decision. I think as far as that, I would say that is very much democracy in the MPs group.
Well, let's look at the state of Penang, Anthony, that's led by the DAP. It's a Pakatan Harapan government, of course. It's already in its third term. Many of your critics will say that the Penang government is almost indistinguishable from its predecessor, Barisan Nasional. In this regard, it's pro-big business, it's pro-developer. It has an antagonistic relationship to civil society. Many fisticuff type of scenarios over the last couple of years with very well-known social activists. What's going on in Penang? Is Penang the true face of the DAP in governance?
Well, I think when we talk about social democracy, that doesn't mean that we are against the market economy. Of course, we know that we need the private sector to drive the economy. But in terms of our social policies and our social protection, in terms of solidarity with the people, I think Penang government has shown that we are very much upholding our own ideology and our own consciousness. Of course, when certain approaches by leaders, how do you engage with the civil society and how do you engage with the public at large in terms of public debates on public issues, that sometimes you create that perception that we are against them. Anyhow, I think it's not so much about the different values that we are against the civil society, but I think rather in terms of approach sometimes, and how do we communicate with them. But by and large, I think as far as Penang State Government is concerned, we have put the benefits of the people above everything else. And I think that has been shown in the past 2-3 years.
Yeah, if I can jump in there. So you're saying it's a matter of style, and is the style that is characteristic of the present leadership really part of an older history of being the outsider, being fighting the opposition, fighting the good fight, and not one of governance and inclusiveness that a lot of younger people are expecting. They're expecting a certain a change of tone. They don't want just strong leaders. The tiger of Julutong. I mean, Kapral Singh's self-description is a very faded image now. It's an image of from a bygone era. Does the DAP conscious of its own optics when it comes to style?
Well, of course, I think that is in terms of, as I mentioned earlier on, we have come to a certain age after 55 years. And moving forward, I think in terms of Malaysian politics and how the party position ourselves, is very much we have to show that we have a collective leadership. And of course, we have to be more inclusive. But of course, I mean, people always complain or always critique that the style of Lim Guan Ning, for example. But I mean, he has come a long way since the 80s. And of course, he has carried a very, very aggressive approach and a very aggressive image. Of course, to the critics that he is the bad boy. But to the masses, I think he delivers. I mean, the people of Penang has supported him in the past 3 terms. And as far as moving forward, yes, I do agree that the DAP will need a more balanced approach, and we need a team of leaders. It's not just depending on 1 or 2 strong men. Of course, that is the backbone of the DAP. In 70s, in the 80s, where you have very strong character like Lim Kee Siang, Kapal Singh, these are the image of the DAP. But I think moving forward, and currently we have a big pool of leaders that we can project and that we can develop, and in order to showcase to the people that DAP is not just about 1 or 2 leaders, but we have a group of young and energetic and visionary Malaysian leaders.
Well, okay, so as we come to the end of our first segment, and I just wanted to kind of circle back to my very first question at the start of the interview, which is, after 55 years of DAP, whether the party is doing any self-reflection. I want to ask about you personally, Anthony. I mean, is this time for you to take stock and have a bit of self-reflection about what you've learned in your 20 or so months in Putrajaya?
Well, I have self-reflect for the past 1 year since the fall of the PH government. Of course, we learned a lot in the 22 months. Personally, of course, this is my first experience in the government. I was elected as a state assemblyman in 2004. And from 2004 to 2018, I always play the role of opposition. But in the 22 months when we were in government, I have the opportunity to learn to be in the executive. And of course, a lot of things that we have learned, there are a lot of lessons learned, and how do we engage with the civil servants, the civil service, and how do we implement in policies, and how do we push forward our agendas in the government. I think those are the lessons that we have learned, and we have to improve ourselves if we have another opportunity.
Okay, well, Anthony, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll have you stay on the line because we've got so much more to discuss, particularly talk of a new political alignment. So let's come back to that conversation in just a couple of minutes. Stay tuned to Consider This. Welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa. Idris. With me is Sharaad, Kuttan. Let's continue our conversation with former Transport Minister YB Anthony Loke. So there's been a lot of talk, Anthony, about a new political alignment, a new realignment, if I may, between UMNO and PKR. clearly proof that there are no permanent enemies in politics. I'm wondering if this all works out in terms of if there is to be a political realignment. What is DAP's position in this? What future do you envision DAP playing, particularly in a potential cooperation with UMNO?
Well, first of all, I think we have not come to any formal discussion about our cooperation, especially between PH and UMNO. We have not even discussed that within the framework of Pakatan Harapan. DAP has set certain parameters, very clear parameters of our position when we come to work with UMNO. Firstly is that we will not work with any leaders who are corrupted, who are implicated or have been convicted in courts to form a government. I think that is very clear. That parameter is very clear. But in terms of moving forward, we are very, very aware that in Malaysian politics, there's no single political party who can form a government by itself. So whether we like it or not, we have to form coalition in terms of forming a government, when we come to forming a government. How does this new coalition will be formed? It very much depends on the results of the next general election. And I think if the next general election has not created a clear winner, then you have to think about how to form a new partners, how to form a new partnerships. How do you find a new coalition partners to form a stable government? I think that will come only after the general election.
Well, that brings up two interesting questions. One is the existing cooperation between Pakatan Harapan and UMNO in Perak recently in ousting the Bersatu Menteri Besar, and also the cooperation we see happening in Johor. So in effect, there already is cooperation. What basis is that being founded? Why is it possible that you can do that in Perak and Johor, but at this point in time deny federal level cooperation?
We are not denying any cooperation. I mean, when we come to cooperation, of course, in the case of Perak and Johor, we are not forming a government with UMNO. We are not part of their government. I think that must be very clear. In the case of Perak and to a certain extent Johor, there is a confidence and supply agreement, where this is a mechanism that we want to create stability at the state level, where we are not part of the government, but we get some treatment, I mean, equal treatment from the government to the opposition. So I think that is a form of cooperation, but we are not heading towards a coalition in Perak or in Johor. So when we talk about political cooperation, of course, it can come in any form. But I think the current debate and the current concerns of some of our supporters is that whether or not we will form government together with certain leaders in UMNO currently without going through election. I think that is the parameter that I'm talking about.
Anthony, you're making that distinction quite clear. You said that there's a clear position that DAP will not work with people who have been convicted in courts, or convicted criminals. Are you trying to make that clear distinction that UMNO is not all made up of people who have been convicted in court?
Yes, as far as that position is concerned, we have made it very clear that I think in terms of cooperation with UMNO, party to party, we have not come to that stage. As I mentioned, UMNO has made a very clear position as far as their party is concerned, is that they are not working with PKR and DAP. But that does not mean that what they call that in future that cannot happen. But as far as currently, I think at this very moment and going into the next election, whether or not we have a clear position or clear cooperation, what I'm trying to say is that we have no formal discussion about that, and we have not discussed anything about that within the framework of Pakatan Harapan.
Yeah, Anthony, one of the things that observers are saying is that, cooperation between UMNO and the DAP in particular might actually have this unintended consequence of breaking that very toxic race politics that we had, where UMNO sees the DAP as anathema to Malay and Muslim identity in the country. The DAP sees, ethnic chauvinism, basically embodied in the party UMNO. By cooperating, it really does break that nexus between race and party political identity. Would you welcome cooperation if it actually has that consequence?
Well, first of all, I mean, as I mentioned, politics is an art of possible, and politics is dynamic. We are not closing the door in terms of future cooperation, but as far as now, our position is very clear. Vis-a-vis our cooperation with certain leaders in UMNO. That position is very clear, and I think the party leader has made it very clear. Squatting has made that very clear. But as you mentioned, I think more and more people that that I'm talking to, that they said one of the way out is for the two major parties, UMNO and DAP, to come to the same table. But that you need political courage and you need political view, not just from one side, but from both sides. First of all, I'm not prepared. I'm not prepared to even talk about it, even discuss about that. DAP, of course, we are willing to discuss. As far back as in August, I have made that position openly. I mean, my personal opinion, I have advocated that the Prime Minister himself, Muhyiddin himself, has to call an all-party conference. Let's sit down all together to face COVID, to face a pandemic, and let's all parties to sit down to see how do we find a national consensus. I think DAP is always open to find a consensus, not just among our coalition partners, but with other parties as well.
Okay, so talking about, so cooperation across the aisle is one thing. What about cooperation with coalition partners? I'm wondering, political commentators have pointed out that Anwar Ibrahim has done more to damage the support towards Pakatan Harapan in the past year than any other single factor. And I'm wondering whether you still think that Anwar Ibrahim should be the leader of the opposition.
Well, I think our position is very clear. Currently, he is still the opposition leader. There is no talk about changing opposition leader at this point of time. Of course, we have some differences with Anwar on certain issues. We have voiced our opinion, I think, both internally as well as openly. And we will continue to discuss, we will continue to negotiate, and within the framework of Pakatan Harapan. And our position has always been, we are not breaking up Pakatan Harapan. Pakatan Harapan must remain intact, and we must find additional or more partners in terms of our cooperation with other opposition forces. And we have voiced it up to Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim. We have said that Pakatan Harapan should build bridges, not just among our three coalition partners, but as well as other forces within the opposition.
Anthony, winning power is one thing, or regaining power would be for Pakistan, I guess, a kind of small victory. The issue for the Malaysian population at large is competence in governance. So while you and some other, cabinet ministers from the PH era are often lauded as having been good ministers, there were a lot of very incompetent and unimaginative individuals in the Pakatan Harapan cabinet. Not all of them have defected to the other side. How are you going to guarantee that when Pakatan Harapan Plus or any other formation comes back to power, that they will actually bring with it competent governance reflected in the quality of the cabinet that is formed?
Well, first of all, I thank you for the compliments. And if you look at some of the faces which have always been controversial during the PH government, most of them right now are in the current PN cabinet.
Well, not all of them.
Of course, it's fair enough to say not all. But of course, I think that 22 months have given us a good opportunity to also test our own abilities and to evaluate the effectiveness of our MPs and those who are in the government, especially those who are in ministers or deputy ministers. So if we have an opportunity to form government again, to form a new cabinet, of course, that will be the basis. Whether or not you can perform, that will be the basis. I mean, those who can perform, definitely, I think they will be given more opportunities. And as far as MPs are concerned, I think we have many young MPs who are in the wings. And I think they are equally capable to fill the shoes. If those who are not capable to or did not perform well during the 22 months, then we have other pools of candidates that we can select from.
All right. YB Anthony Loke, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you for taking time out of your busy
Thank you
schedule
very much.
to speak to us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so
That's
much.
all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
Thank you so much for watching, and good night.
Bye.